All right, so we're going to start with a basic introduction into graphing. So graphing is a way of taking two measurements or two variables or quantities and comparing them and showing the relationship between those things visually, right? That's the whole point of graphing, is that it's another way of absorbing information so that our brain can kind of work on it in a different way, right? If you just have big lists of data, it's pretty hard for our brain to make sense of that. But if we look at a visual representation of that data, a lot of times our brain starts to see a pattern and goes, oh, I think I see what's going on here. So for a basic graph, what we have here is we have two what are called axes, which are essentially number lines. So you can see we have one number line here, and we have one number line here, and they are at 90-degree angles to each other. They are perpendicular. We've got negative on one side, right? So this is going off towards negative infinity. We've got numbers increasing over here going off towards positive infinity. And then we have the same thing in a vertical format. So down here we have negatives going to negative infinity, and then up here we have positives going to positive infinity. Okay, so these two axes divide things up into four quadrants. We've got this quadrant. That's quadrant 1. Over here we have quadrant 2, down here quadrant 3, and over here quadrant 4. So those are the four quadrants, right? I'm not going to test you on the numbers of them, but you should recognize that the points that lie in each quadrant all have the same type of sign together. Okay, so then what do we do with this? What we essentially do is plot points. So we could plot points like this, 0, 1, and then it pops up right here. So how did we get to that point? Well, as you can see, our point is represented with an ordered pair. So it's two numbers right here, and we put them in a parentheses. The first digit there represents the horizontal location. The second digit represents the vertical location. So what you do is you start here at 0, 0, which is called the origin. It's the middle of everything. And 0, 1 tells us to move 0 units horizontally. So we don't move it all horizontally. And then you move 1 unit in the positive vertical direction. So then we go up 1, and then that's where our point is. Okay, so we could also look at this one here, 3, 3. That says to move over 3 and then up 3. And we do that right there, and then we've got our point. We have some things that are represented by a whole bunch of points together, like a line. So we can graph a line, right? We'll get into that later, but we can graph lines, and what a line is really just a whole bunch of points together, but they're so close together, they appear to form this solid line. But it's not really a solid line, it's just an infinite number of points that are so infinitely close together, it looks like some kind of solid structure there. Okay, so that's how you're generally going to move around and plot points. So here we've got a table that we can form using a bunch of rules. So here what we do is we pick some x values. So we have a table of x values. And then over here, this tells you how to get your y values, right? The x values represent where you are on what's called the x-axis. That's the horizontal axis. The y's tell you about where you're located on the y-axis. That's the vertical axis. And then we need some kind of rule to figure out, well, how do I get the x value from the y value? Well, you can see in my table right here, what I'm doing is I'm squaring the x value. So if we take -2 and square it, we get 4. -1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. And so this would be the point -2, 4, because you go back 2, up 4. This would be -1, 1, because you go over 1, up 1. This is 0, 0 right here. This is 1, 1. And this is 2, 4. Okay. Now, all of those would lie on the graph of y equals x squared. So we can see that they fit that formation right there. So we have numerous ways of representing graphs. We can do it with an equation like we're doing right here. We can do it by plotting a whole bunch of the points, although if you plot a finite number of points on an infinite graph, you're just going to get some holes. You're going to get some missing values. Like here, we've only plotted 5 of the points, not all of them. Okay, but we can look at both of those methods, and that's, you'll see these tables in the book where you've got some x values in the first column, some y values in the second column, and they either give you the y values or they have to tell you how to get the y values from the x values. Okay, in this case, I squared the x values to get the y values, but it could be any formula. You could do any type of a thing to make those work out. Another thing you're going to learn in this section is the midpoint formula. So if you're given 2 points, how do you find the point in the middle of those 2 points, the midpoint? So we're not going to use this formula a ton. It will come up in the homework in this section. It's good to know how to find the midpoint of something. Basically, what you want to think about is the fact that the x value of your midpoint is going to be the average of the 2 x values in your points, and the y value for your midpoint is going to be the average of the y values of your 2 points. So basically, just average the x values, average the y values, and you'll get a point that lies exactly in the middle. So let's see that at work. Let's get rid of these. Let's say that we've got these 2 points that we're concerned about right here. We've got the 0.13 because you go over 1 up 3. We've got the 0.57 because you go over 5 and up 7. And we want to figure out what the midpoint is of those 2. So what we would do using our formula, we're going to make a point. All right, so we want to add our 2 x values together. So we have a 1 x value from the first point and a 5 x value from the second point, and then we're going to divide those by 2, and then we want to go over, we've got a comma. Now we're going to do the same thing to the y values. So we're going to take the y values and average those. So 3 plus 7 divided by 2, and then if we just put that in the parentheses for our point, see how it's kind of already figured out what I want it to do. Now it gave us a point, and as we can see, that does in fact lie right in the middle of these 2 points. So that's how you would go through and calculate the midpoint in between 2 points. So this is what we call a step function. You're going to see things like this in the book. So there's different types of step functions. There's the floor, there's the ceiling. Basically what the floor function does is it rounds down. So if you have a number like 2.5, rounds it down to 2. 3.99 rounds it down to 3. So you could see if we're right here at 1.5, if our x value is 1.5, it's rounding our y value down to 1. So all the x values in this region have a y value of 1. Then once you hit 2, it jumps up here and goes to 2. And you create what looks like steps, right? You could imagine walking up these steps right here in order to get the in order to call it a floor function. Okay, so you're going to see some kind of graphs like that. It's the same idea. It's just that parts of the graph are disconnected, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make any big deal. It's just how it works. Okay, so work on those. See if you can make sense of that, and we'll see you in the future.